Hi, I'm Gregory Hogue, here today with my good friend Dr. Glen Rein. He has a degree from the University of London and has done research at Harvard and Stanford in biochemistry. And the interesting thing that brought us together almost 25 years ago now was when he was doing research with DNA to discover how consciousness had an effect on DNA, and he was actually able to demonstrate that. He also did some work with our geometries to discover that there were certain things going on with geometric forms that also affected the DNA within the body. And he's been doing a lot of research with water, along the lines of what Dr. Emoto was doing. He was actually predating some of that work. But nevertheless, why don't you talk to us more about some of the things that you've been doing? It's so interesting.
Well, my focus has been on studying the effects of different kinds of subtle energy on biological systems and water in general. Because my background may be in biochemistry, but I've been part of the bioelectromagnetics community for many years. And there they study the effects of electromagnetic fields on biological systems. But only a small, special kind of electromagnetic field. And I got interested in other kinds of electromagnetic fields, which now we can use the term subtle energy to describe these energies, but they don't have to be electromagnetic. They could be sound and light and plasmas. So now these days I'm still working on subtle energy, but I'm now expanded beyond the electromagnetic domain into other forms of subtle energy, which is why I'm very fascinated and interested in working with Greg and metaforms, because of all the geometric shapes out there and products out there, his really work. So if I'm going to start going to the lab with one of these things as a generator of subtle energy, I might as well pick one that really works. So that's why we linked up after having met all those years ago.
What were some of the things that you discovered when you were first working with some of the geometries that I had given you at that time?
Well, yeah, I guess in those days I was working with DNA, and I was measuring the winding and unwinding of the two strands. We all remember that the helix is composed of two strands of DNA, and that they can unwind and wind as part of their natural function in the body. And in those days, we were working, I don't remember which geometric patterns you gave me to work with.
You showed me a picture of one of them, and that was actually the Aquarian Pyramid, which I don't even make anymore. I've evolved that into a more relevant, appropriate form.
But that one really works, dude.
Well, the new one works
better. Yeah, there we go. Absolutely.
We just keep getting downloads from our guidance that says, if you want to improve things. But also, we don't just focus on DNA or on water. What we focus on is what guidance gives us for raising consciousness. And actually, it seems to make a difference in the things that you're studying as well.
The fact that the energy is targeting the mind, or the consciousness in the mind, or the subtle energies in the mind is interesting. But the assay that I developed working with both DNA and water nowadays, I don't measure the winding and unwinding as you asked in the early days. Now I measure the electrical properties of DNA and water. And the reason I'm doing that is because when I was measuring winding and unwinding in the old days, that's a phenomena that occurs all the time, and both occur. DNA winds and unwinds as part of its normal, healthy function. So you can't say that one is good and one is bad. You can't say if an energy is bad by saying that it changes the unwinding or winding of DNA. So I was looking around for another assay that would allow me to distinguish between a beneficial effect and a harmful effect. Because I also work with cell phone energies and other kind of energies that are harmful, not to demonstrate that they're harmful, but to demonstrate that subtle energies can reverse the negative effects of these harmful energies. So I developed a new method which has to do with measuring the electrical properties of DNA and water. That is to say, the electrical conductivity. And the way I do it is kind of different than everybody else, so everybody else can't repeat my work. Well, no. I did it because it's the right way to do it. For example, when you buy a conductivity meter and you stick it in water and you measure the conductivity, okay, that's a number and that's a measurement, but the measurement was taken at an arbitrary frequency of about 2 kilohertz because the electrical engineers that designed these things said, well, we'll take a measurement at 2 kilohertz. But that's very arbitrary, and what you really need to do is to take a measurement at the resonance frequency of the target. So if I'm working with DNA, it's one set of frequencies that can act as resonant frequencies of the molecule, and water has a different set of resonant frequencies. So if you tune the conductivity meter to take a measurement at one of those frequencies, then you're really resonating with the system that you're measuring, and you're able to measure, it becomes very sensitive, and you're able to measure the effects of subtle energies on the electrical properties of DNA and water. So that's a new method that I've developed that I used recently to test several of Greg's new devices.
And, okay, what were some of the things that you discovered when you were working with some of the new forms that I had given you, which also, by the way, are turning on a motor at a very particular speed, because what we found is that when you take a geometry and you spin it, one, increases the energy flow and the interaction with the environment, but also when you control that speed precisely, and with these motors, the new causal generator, what we have added to it is a particular frequency within the motor itself. So it's generating a frequency in the megahertz range, which has a profound effect on the environment. And so you were measuring certain aspects of the conductivity of water, as you were talking about.
Yeah, I haven't, in these new experiments, that's an important distinction. The three-dimensional geometry is spinning. In the old experiments, it was stationary, and I put the DNA in the center of the geometric pattern. Now I'm putting the DNA, or I'm sorry, the water, the current experiments were done with water, on top of the geometric pattern, or on the side of the geometric pattern, which, because it's spinning, is radiating a very special kind of subtle energy. And the question is, would this kind of energy affect water? And of course, DNA, I haven't done those experiments yet. But in terms of water, it turns out that some geometries, I guess I was expecting that, work better than others and resonate with water better and produce a larger effect. The effect that I'm observing is to measure and demonstrate that the water has a higher conductivity. That means it conducts electricity better. It conducts electrons better. Believe it or not, water flows through electrons and DNA, and you can actually measure that with the electrodes in this modern technology called a conductivity meter. So in essence, what we're measuring is not so much the amount of energy in the water after being treated with a subtle energy device, but the movement of energy in the water, the conductivity, the flow of the energy, as you talked earlier, in the water.